Today, we see Hamlet as this highbrow kind of intellectual play.
hmm
But in Shakespeare's time, it was a smash hit, like super popular.
Oh, absolutely. It was a crowd pleaser, for sure. To understand why, you have to imagine the theatrical scene in Elizabethan England. The Spanish tragedy and others like Titus Andronicus, they were all the rage. The epitome of the Senecan revenge tragedy. And these Senecan plays, they usually involve ghosts demanding revenge, gruesome violence, lots of it, and of course, those intricate plots, all driven by a thirst for vengeance. Let's just say Shakespeare was not afraid to push the boundaries. But it's crucial to remember the context of the time. As shocking as it might seem now, back then, that violence was part of the appeal. Audiences loved spectacle, grand displays of emotion.
So it gives us a glimpse into what they were into back then.
Exactly, how sensibilities have evolved over time.
What they thought was entertaining back then is definitely not what we'd put on primetime TV now.
But even with all the, let's say, shocking elements, Titus Andronicus is so important for understanding Shakespeare's development as a playwright. Shows us what his audiences were responding to.
I see what you mean. It's like a stepping stone to the complexity we see later on in Hamlet. Shakespeare comes along and says, okay, I'm going to take those elements, but I'm going to make something even better, and that's how we get Hamlet. Hamlet takes those classic tropes, the ghosts, the revenge, all that, but it just adds this whole other level of psychology to it.
Yeah, it's so much more than just, here's a ghost, now go get revenge.
Everyone's always, oh, Hamlet and his procrastination, but he's not just putting it off, right? There's something deeper going on.
There is. Hamlet is, he's complicated. He's thoughtful, philosophical. Really, how many other Shakespearean characters sit around pondering the nature of existence?
And he's dealing with a lot internally, right? Is revenge even the right thing to do? What about the consequences?
The morality of revenge, the fear of damnation. He even questions the ghost itself. Talk about overthinking. A.C. Bradley, the Shakespeare scholar, he argued that Hamlet's basically just totally wrong for the role of a classic avenger.
Which is really interesting when you think about it, because it's not like Shakespeare shied away from those more traditional revenge characters, right? We've got Fortinbras,
Right.
Laertes. They're all about taking action, no hesitation.
Totally. And they act as these perfect foils to Hamlet. They highlight just how different he is.
They do, and maybe that's why we find him so relatable. Even now, because we see ourselves in that struggle.
I think so. And it's through the soliloquies, which, by the way, Shakespeare basically perfected,
Oh, for sure.
that we really get into Hamlet's head. All those doubts, insecurities, the overthinking.
And that's what makes him human, right?
Yeah.
In that first soliloquy, when he's talking about his dad dying, his mom marrying Claudius, talk about relatable content. Who hasn't felt that kind of disillusionment?
It's true. Shakespeare was a master at tapping into those universal feelings.
Totally.
And Hamlet's grief
Yeah.
for his father, who he sees as this perfect figure, it's so raw, so real.
And then to have that grief mixed with the betrayal of his mother marrying Claudius so quickly.
It just throws his whole world into chaos.
It does. And that's where that line comes in. Frailty, thy name is woman.
Oh,
That's a tough line and definitely a product of its time, but it shows how deeply this whole thing has affected him, how it's warped his worldview, at least when it comes to women.
yeah, it speaks to his emotional state, that's for sure. And that disillusionment, it bleeds into all his relationships, especially with Ophelia.
Speaking of Ophelia, she's often seen as this tragic figure, just a pawn in this whole revenge plot. But I don't know, there's more to her than that, right? She's not just a victim.
No, absolutely not. There are moments, especially when she's talking to Laertes, her brother, where you see her intelligence, her wit, even her strength.
Yeah, she's definitely no fool. Like when she warns Laertes about being a hypocrite, she's calling him out.
She sees what's going on.
She does. But then on the other hand, we see how terribly Hamlet treats her. The get thee to a nunnery scene is just awful.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
So how do we reconcile those two sides of Ophelia, the sharp, insightful woman, and then the woman who seems to crumble under the weight of Hamlet's cruelty?
It's tricky, right? We have to remember the world she's living in. It's patriarchal, her options are limited, her voice is often silenced.
That's true.
And as horrible as Hamlet's words are, I think they speak more to his own issues, his baggage from his mom, rather than who Ophelia really is.
And then there's the whole thing with Hamlet pretending to be crazy, his antic disposition. What's up with that? Is he just putting on an act, or is there something more to it?
I think that's the question, isn't it? It was a common thing in those old revenge plays, the whole fake madness thing. It let characters do things they normally couldn't. But with Shakespeare, it's always more than just a trope. He takes that idea and does something so much deeper with it. Hamlet's not just pretending, he's using it.
To figure things out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like this way to explore who he is, what the world is really like.
Kind of like he's using madness to show how messed up everything else is.
Hamlet dies, everyone's dead. Is that his fatal flaw? Or is there something, I don't know, more heroic about the way he thinks, the way he feels so deeply?
He's surrounded by guys like Fortinbras and Laertes who just act. No hesitation. Are they the real heroes?
Right. It makes you think. But maybe Hamlet's legacy isn't about what he did or didn't do. Maybe it's his humanity, the fact that he struggled with these big questions, that he felt things so deeply. He makes us think, too, about revenge, about what's right and wrong.
He does. Trying to live up to this ideal in a world that's anything but ideal.
Exactly. And that's what makes this play so timeless. It's like he holds up a mirror and says, hey, this is what it means to be human. Love, loss, betrayal, figuring it all out. We all go through it.